Hi and hello guys, I'm Prasi and today we are gonna see the story of Cinderella. Many years ago, there lived a merchant and his wife. They had a small daughter named Cinderella. She was very pretty. Unfortunately, the merchant's wife died of a serious illness. The merchant married again, thinking that his new wife would take care of Cinderella. The merchant's new wife had two daughters of her own. As soon as they moved into the merchant's house, they started showing their true colors. Actually, the merchant did not know that his new wife and her two daughters were proud and cruel. Cinderella's stepmother and sisters treated her like a servant. The poor little girl was made to do all the household work from morning till evening, and in the night her stepmother would scream, "You never do your work properly. There's no food for you tonight." The two stepsisters were always rude to Cinderella. They asked her to comb their hair and wash their clothes. "We should look pretty," they would talk among themselves. But the truth was that even in her torn clothes and tangled hair, Cinderella looked much more beautiful than any other girl in the kingdom. One day, the prince of the kingdom announced a ball at the palace. All the young girls of the kingdom were invited to the ball. The prince was going to select his bride. Cinderella's sisters also prepared for the ball, but Cinderella was asked to stay back home. Deep inside her heart, she had dreams of going to the ball, but she knew that her dreams would never come true. Finally, the day arrived. Cinderella's cruel sisters got ready and drove away in their splendid carriage, pushing her aside. Cinderella just kept looking at them with moist eyes. She sat in a corner of the house and began to cry. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Suddenly, Cinderella saw a soft glow. Standing before her was a gracious lady with a magic wand in her hand. "Look up, Cinderella. I am your fairy godmother," she said. Cinderella wiped off her tears and stood up. "Don't feel sad, my child. Tell me your wish and I'll fulfill it," said the fairy. Cinderella at once said, My only wish is to go to the ball. But I know it's not possible. I don't even have a proper clothes and shoes. "Do as I say, and I promise that you will be able to go to the ball," said the fairy. Cinderella swore to do as the fairy said. "Get me a pumpkin," said the fairy. And Cinderella quickly picked up the biggest one from the garden and gave it to the fairy. The fairy then touched the pumpkin with her wand. At once the pumpkin turned into a golden coach. The fairy then asked for her 6 mice and transformed them into 6 horses. She again waved her magic wand and turned a rat into a coachman. Cinderella was delighted to see all this. Now the fairy touched Cinderella with her wand, and her torn clothes became royal satin gown. Next, the fairy gave her a pair of delicate glass slippers. Now Cinderella looked like a pretty princess, all set to go to the ball. "Remember one thing, Cinderella," added the fairy. "The magic spell will end at midnight, so you must leave the palace before midnight. If you delay, your carriage will turn back into a pumpkin, your coachman a rat, your horses back to mice, and your dress into rags." "I shall follow your words," said Cinderella as she climbed into the carriage. When Cinderella walked into the ballroom, everyone was stunned at her beauty and grace. The prince overlooked the entire gathering and ran towards her. He welcomed her with open arms and started dancing with her. "She's really enchanting," whispered the gathering. All the other girls felt jealous of her. The prince had fallen in love with Cinderella instantaneously. Cinderella too liked him. But before they could talk a word, the big clock struck 12. Cinderella was reminded of her fairy godmother's words. She ran back to the palace gates in her hurry. She tripped and fell off, losing one of her glass slippers. When she reached home, she was back to her rags and tangled hair. Soon her sisters returned. They were unaware of all that had happened. Cinderella kept everything to herself and continued doing her daily chores in her usual way. Her sisters talked about the beautiful girl who appeared at the ball and fled from there all of a sudden. But Cinderella didn't tell them anything. However, at the palace, the prince was restless. He did not even know the name of the girl he had fallen in love with. All he had was one of her glass slippers. He sent royal messengers with the glass slipper through the streets of the kingdom. Search each and every household and find out the foot that fits into the slipper, ordered the prince. All young women should try the glass slipper. The prince would marry the girl whose foot fits perfectly, announced the royal messengers. They went from house to house, but there was none whose foot was of the size of the glass slipper. Finally, the royal messengers came to Cinderella's home. Cinderella's ugly sisters tried their best to fit their foot into the glass slipper, but all their hopes fell flat. No matter how much they pushed and pulled, but they could not succeed. Suddenly, one of the messengers spotted Cinderella standing aside. "She's just a servant," frowned her sisters. "Young lady, we can't allow anyone to shy away," said the messenger in stern voice. "It is a prince's command that all the young ladies must try the slipper. Come and put your foot," he asked Cinderella. And there it was. As soon as Cinderella slipped her foot into the glass slipper, it fitted perfectly as if it was made for her. The messengers instantly informed the prince. He rode his horse to Cinderella's house and at once recognized his love. The cruel stepmother and stepsisters of Cinderella kept looking on as the prince carried pretty Cinderella away with him to the palace. In a few days, they were married in a grand ceremony, and together they lived happily ever after. Hope you all enjoyed this story. Thanks for watching this, guys. See you again in another fairy tale. Until then, take care. Bye bye.